The arrogant alien bastards laughed in humanity's face, underestimating our power and dismissing our fleet as child's toys until the moment they realized their fatal mistake. Humans built those ships. The Zanari, an advanced alien species that thought themselves the undisputed masters of the galaxy, were exploring a new sector of space when their long-range scanners detected an unknown fleet of ships. The Zanari warships, sleek and predatory, moved to intercept, expecting to find some primitive civilization they could easily conquer or destroy. As the aliens closed in on the human ships, they began to laugh. Human technology looked pitiful compared to the Zanari's gleaming hulls, bristling with weapons. The ships were small, ugly, utilitarian. Where were the elegant lines, the beautiful curves of truly advanced vessels? These junkyard rejects weren't worth the Zanari's time. Sirius, the Zanari commander, opened a transmission to the human fleet, his face twisted in a mocking sneer. "Attention, unknown ships. You are trespassing in Zanari space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. Your primitive vessels are no match for our might." There was silence across the comm channels for a long moment. Then a deep human voice crackled through, calm and collected. "This is Commander Nolan Wright of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are mistaken, Zanari. It is you who are trespassing in our space, and you are gravely mistaken about our capabilities." Sirius snorted in disbelief. The arrogance of these creatures. "You are delusional, human. Your ships are pathetic. Surrender now and your lives may be spared. This is your only chance." "Looks can be deceiving," Nolan replied coolly. "The fleet you see before you is but a tiny fraction of our strength, nothing but a facade. Did you really think this was the extent of human advancement? This was simply a test to draw you in. You underestimate us at your peril." Sirius hesitated, doubt creeping into his mind for the first time. The humans sounded so certain. What if there was more to these paltry ships than appeared? His fingers hovered over the firing controls, wondering if he was making a massive mistake. In that moment of indecision, Nolan spoke a single word: decloak. Shimmering into view all around the Zanari ships, hundreds of human warships appeared as their advanced cloaking systems disengaged. But these were nothing like the ships Sirius had foolishly mocked moments ago. Each was a behemoth of armor and weaponry, vaster than any Zanari dreadnought. The sensor scans coming in defied belief. These human ships had firepower and defenses generations ahead of anything the Zanari had. It was immediately clear that humans had not only matched the Zanari's technology, they had surpassed it. The primitive fleet had been nothing but a distraction to lure the enemy in. The balance of power shifted in an instant with this devastating revelation. The Zanari ships were now hopelessly outgunned. Terror turned Sirius's blood to ice as he realized how badly he had miscalculated. "It's Zanari fleet. This is your only warning," Nolan broadcast to the alien ships. His voice hardened with resolve. "You have 10 seconds to turn around and leave Earth space. If you do not comply, we will open fire. Earth will not allow any threat to our security." Nolan's words rang with grim determination. He knew this encounter had shattered any illusion of peace between humanity and the Zanari. War was now inevitable, but he would not allow human lives to be threatened by alien aggression. He would defend Earth to his last breath against any foe. The fate of humanity now hung on this pivotal moment. If the Zanari did not retreat, it would be a bloodbath that would consume the stars. Nolan dragged himself back to Earth, his ship limping into dry dock with the deep scars of battle marring its hull. He wasted no time heading straight to military command, still in his sweat-stained flight suit, to brief the top brass on what the hell just happened out there. "This was a test," Nolan told them, voice hard as iron. "We called their bluff and showed our real hand. And now they know we're not just some primitive punching bag for them to kick around whenever they feel like flexing." Generals and admirals exchanged grim looks across the briefing table. Nolan's superior, Admiral Hendricks, spoke up. "Good work out there, Commander. Sounds like we sent those bastards running with their tails between their legs." "For now," Nolan said. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. We wounded their pride today, and I guarantee they're already plotting their revenge. The room erupted into argument. Some pounded the table, shouting that they should hit the Zanari now while they had the momentum. Take out their fleet, bomb their worlds, neutralize the threat for good before those alien freaks could counter-strike. Others, Nolan included, urged caution and restraint. We're negotiating from a position of strength now. This is our chance to sue for peace, establish treaties and boundaries. Going in guns hot is only going to escalate this into a war we may not win. The arguments raged back and forth, military leaders torn between retaliation and diplomacy. Nolan slumped back in his chair, exhausted to his core, yet knowing the fight was just beginning. Sirius stormed through the halls of the Zanari High Command, fury radiating off him in searing waves. Everywhere he went, subordinates scurried out of his path, desperate to escape his wrath. He burst into the war room, confronted by a sea of his fellow commanders and their accusing stares. "Failing's ours," their eyes screamed. "Coward. Retreat from mere humans? You've disgraced us all." "Enough," Sirius roared. "We underestimated the humans. It will not happen again." He whirled to his chief science officer. "I want everything we scanned on those human ships. Every scrap of data analyzed down to the molecule. Find out what makes their ships able to hide from us, and figure out how to break through those damn shields." The scientists scurried to obey, already poring over streams of technical data. Sirius turned his burning gaze to his top general. "Mobilize the reserves. Pull ships from every sector if you have to. I want our strongest fleet assembled and ready to strike when I give the word. This time we hit the humans so hard they'll never dare stand against us again." As Nolan walked across the tarmac to his new command, he couldn't help but stare in awe. The EDS Titan was a magnificent beast of a ship, a hulking colossus jam-packed with the biggest guns and thickest armor Earth had ever built. "She's all yours, Commander," Admiral Hendricks said, clapping Nolan on the shoulder. "The most advanced warship in the galaxy. Take good care of her, you hear?" Nolan nodded, running a hand along the Titan's armored flank. "I'll treat her right, sir, and I'll use her to make damn sure those Zanari think twice before screwing with humanity again." As the Titan blasted away from Earth on her maiden voyage, alarms suddenly screeched through the bridge. "Commander, sensors picking up weird energy readings from Zanari space," Nolan's tactical officer reported. "I'm seeing power surges, ships moving around. I think they're up to something." Nolan frowned at the data, an icy ball of dread forming in his gut. The Zanari were mobilizing for something big, that much was clear, and he doubted it was for anything good. He opened a priority comm channel back to Earth Command. "Admiral, it's Nolan. You need to see these scans we just picked up. I think the Zanari are gearing up for round 2. Nolan paced the Titan's bridge, his mind churning. The more data they collected, the clearer the picture became, and the worse it looked. The Zanari were on a war footing, and Earth needed to do something before they struck first. "Command, we can't just sit here polishing our hulls and hope the Zanari play nice," Nolan urged over the comms. "We need to act. Send a recon mission. Bulk up patrols on the border. Something. If we get caught with our pants down, it's game over." But Earth's leadership remained paralyzed by indecision, politicians bickering over the right move. Even Hendricks seemed unsure. Then the news hit like a punch to the gut. One of Earth's border outposts gone. Wiped out in a sudden strike. 0 survivors, and the Zanari's energy signatures were all over it. Nolan knew. The time for talk, for hope, had just been blasted to ash along with that outpost. The Zanari had fired the first shot. Now Earth had no choice but to answer in kind. The Titan's engines roared to life, the mighty ship leaping to the front lines to spearhead humanity's counterstrike. Nolan felt the weight of the moment, the terrible duty before him. War had come to the stars, and Earth would have to fight with everything it had to survive it. The EDS Titan burst out of hyperspace, flanked by a swarm of human warships. Commander Nolan Wright stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the Zanari military installation looming before them. "All ships, weapons hot," Nolan ordered. Hit them hard and fast. Don't give them time to react. The human fleet opened fire, catching the Zanari completely off guard. Lasers and missiles streaked across space, slamming into the alien defenses. Explosions blossomed along the station's hull as Nolan coordinated the assault. "Sir, they're scrambling fighters," his tactical officer reported. "Titan, push forward," Nolan commanded. "Draw their fire while our smaller ships flank them." The massive warship plowed ahead, shrugging off incoming fire. Its powerful weapons tore through Zanari ships and defense platforms. Nolan's strategy worked perfectly. The aliens focused on the Titan, while human frigates and destroyers slipped in to pummel their weak points. But the Zanari fought back fiercely. Human ships exploded left and right as the battle raged. Nolan winced each time, knowing good men and women were dying. "Sir, their main reactor is exposed." "All ships concentrate fire," Nolan shouted. A barrage of missiles and energy beams converged on the Zanari station's core. It detonated in a massive fireball, taking most of the installation with it. Cheers erupted across the human fleet, but Nolan remained grim. "Status report." "We've destroyed their base, sir, but we lost the Intrepid, Valiant, and 3 frigates. Hundreds dead or missing." Nolan nodded solemnly. "Signal the fleet. We're going home." The battered human ships limped back to Earth. They'd won, but at a terrible cost. As they approached, Nolan saw fireworks and celebrations. He felt sick. Admiral Hendricks was waiting as Nolan disembarked. "Outstanding work, Commander. You've given humanity hope." "Tell that to the families of the dead," Nolan muttered. On the Zanari homeworld, Sirius raged at his subordinates. "How did this happen? You assured me our defenses were impenetrable." "The humans, they were more powerful than we thought," a scientist stammered. "Enough excuses," Sirius roared. "Deploy the dreadnought. We'll obliterate their miserable planet and be done with this." News of the Zanari superweapon spread panic on Earth. Nolan found himself summoned before the military council. "Commander, we need you for a critical mission," Admiral Hendricks said. "Infiltrate Zanari space. Find out everything you can about this dreadnought." Nolan nodded grimly. "I'll assemble a team immediately." Days later, Nolan's stealth ship slipped into Zanari territory. They dodged patrols and hacked comm relays, piecing together intel. "Sir, look at this," his science officer whispered, showing him a data file. "The weapon uses some kind of exotic matter as a power source, incredibly unstable." Nolan's eyes widened. "If we could destabilize it, it would destroy the dreadnought, maybe more." "We need to get this info back to Earth," Nolan said. "Plot a course home, maximum speed." As they raced back, Nolan's mind whirled. They had a chance to stop the Zanari, but it would be the riskiest mission of their lives. Nolan's stealth ship streaked through hyperspace, the crew tense and silent as they raced back to Earth. The intel they'd gathered burned in Nolan's mind. The Zanari were building a weapon capable of annihilating entire planets. As soon as they dropped out of hyperspace, Nolan transmitted an urgent message to Earth Command. "This is Commander Wright. We have critical intelligence on a Zanari superweapon, requesting immediate audience with top brass." Hours later, Nolan stood before a table of grim-faced admirals and generals, laying out everything they'd learned about the Zanari dreadnought. "If this weapon becomes operational, Earth is finished," Nolan concluded. "We need to take it out now, before they can use it." Admiral Hendricks leaned forward. "What do you propose, Commander?" Nolan took a deep breath. "A covert strike. My team will infiltrate the Zanari shipyards and sabotage the dreadnought's power source. If we can destabilize it, the whole ship will go up in flames." The room erupted in argument. It was a suicide mission, some said. Too risky. But in the end, they all knew there was no other choice. "You have a go, Commander," Hendricks said. "Godspeed." Days later, Nolan stood on the bridge of the stealth ship Spectre, a skeleton crew of Earth's best operatives at his back. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, he addressed his team. "I won't lie. This mission is as dangerous as they come. But if we fail, Earth burns. So failure isn't an option. The Spectre vanished into hyperspace, bound for the heart of Zanari territory. They dropped out days later in a remote system, a massive shipyard looming before them. "Activate cloaking," Nolan ordered. The Spectre shimmered and faded from view. They crept through the system, dodging Zanari patrols. Nolan's heart pounded as they approached the half-built dreadnought. It was even bigger than he'd imagined, dripping with weapon emplacements. "Prep EVA gear," Nolan said. "We're going in." Minutes later, Nolan led his team out of the airlock. They ignited their jetpacks, streaking silently through space toward the dreadnought's hull. Nolan's breath caught as they passed through the shipyard's security grid. But their stealth tech held. No alarms sounded. They landed on the dreadnought's hull, magnetic boots locking on. Nolan nodded to Corporal Chen, their tech expert. Chen went to work, fingers flying over a portable computer as he hacked the airlock controls. The massive door slid open. Nolan's team slipped inside, finding themselves in a cavernous hangar bay. "Move out," Nolan whispered. "Stay low, stay quiet." They crept through the ship's winding corridors, disabling security systems as they went. Several times they had to duck into alcoves or maintenance shafts to avoid Zanari work crews. After what felt like hours, they reached the central core. The dreadnought's reactor chamber lay just ahead. Nolan took point, easing around the corner, and found himself face to face with a Zanari guard. For a split second, they stared at each other in shock. Then all hell broke loose. Nolan dropped the guard with a burst from his rifle, but the alien had already triggered an alarm. Klaxons blared as Nolan's team sprinted for the reactor. They burst into the massive chamber, a pillar of crackling energy stretching from floor to ceiling. Corporal Ramirez immediately set to work planting explosive charges around the base. "Hurry!" Nolan shouted as the sounds of approaching Zanari troops echoed from the corridor. His team took up defensive positions, laying down suppressing fire as waves of Zanari soldiers poured in. The air filled with plasma bolts and the screams of the dying. "Charge is set!" Ramirez yelled over the din. "Fall back," Nolan ordered. They retreated, fighting every step of the way. Nolan's heart clenched as he saw good men and women cut down around him. Soon only he, Ramirez, and Lieutenant Diaz remained. They reached the hangar bay, Zanari hot on their heels. Nolan pulled the detonator from his belt. "Jump!" he roared. They hurled themselves into space just as Nolan hit the trigger. The dreadnought's reactor went critical behind them in a blinding flash. Nolan tumbled through the void, his companions' forms barely visible nearby. The Spectre decloaked, scooping them up moments before the dreadnought detonated in a massive fireball. As the Spectre limped away, cloaking engaged once more, Nolan stared at the debris field that had been the Zanari superweapon. They'd done it. Earth was safe, for now. But the cost had been so high. Nolan's chest ached as he thought of all the good people they'd lost. This battle was won, but the war was far from finished. The Spectre limped back to Earth, its hull scarred and systems faltering. As Nolan stepped off the ship, he saw not the celebration he expected, but grim faces and hushed voices. Admiral Hendricks approached, his expression heavy. "Commander Wright, your presence is required in the war room immediately." Nolan followed, his body aching from the mission. The war room buzzed with activity, screens flickering with data streams and tactical readouts. Hendricks turned to face him. "For your actions in destroying the Zanari dreadnought, you're promoted to Admiral effective immediately. But I'm afraid I have no time for congratulations." A holographic display sprung to life, showing a massive fleet emerging from the depths of space. "Long-range sensors picked this up an hour ago," Hendricks explained. "The Zanari are coming, and they're bringing everything they have." Nolan studied the display, his throat tightening. "How many ships?" "Thousands. More than we've ever seen. They'll reach our solar system in days." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's very existence hung in the balance. "We can't defend Earth directly," Nolan said, his mind racing. "We'd be overwhelmed in hours." Hendricks nodded. "That's why we're making our stand at Jupiter. The Jovian shipyards are our best chance." Over the next 48 hours, every available ship in Earth's arsenal was mobilized. Nolan stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching as hundreds of vessels formed up around Jupiter's massive form. "Status report," he ordered. "All ships in position, Admiral," his XO replied. "Jovian defense grid is online and at full power." Nolan nodded, his eyes fixed on the long-range scanner. A sea of red dots approached, growing larger by the second. "Here they come," he muttered. The Zanari fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their ships blotting out the stars. For a moment, there was an eerie calm. Then all hell broke loose. Energy beams lanced across space as both sides opened fire. Explosions bloomed in the void as ships on both sides were torn apart. "Evasive maneuvers!" Nolan shouted, as a barrage of Zanari torpedoes streaked towards them. The Titan banked hard, narrowly avoiding destruction. Nolan's mind raced as he coordinated Earth's defenses. "Cruiser Group 3, use Io's gravity well to slingshot around and hit their flank. Destroyer squadrons, concentrate fire on their lead ships." Human vessels darted between Jupiter's moons, using the celestial bodies as cover. But the Zanari pressed forward, their numbers seemingly endless. "Sir, we're losing too many ships," his tactical officer reported. "We can't hold them much longer." Nolan's fingers dug into the arm of his chair. He had one card left to play. "All ships, fall back to Sector 7, he ordered. "Lure them into the storm." Earth's fleet retreated, drawing the Zanari armada towards Jupiter's raging Great Red Spot. As they neared the massive storm, Nolan gave the command. "Now ride the shockwave." Human ships fired their engines in precise bursts, using the storm's electromagnetic turbulence to propel them clear. The pursuing Zanari vessels weren't so lucky. Caught in the maelstrom, hundreds of alien ships spun out of control, colliding with each other in a spectacular light show. "Activate the drones!" Nolan shouted. Suddenly, the massive Jovian shipyards came to life. Panels slid open, revealing swarms of sleek, unmanned fighters. They poured forth by the thousands, engulfing the disoriented Zanari fleet in a storm of laser fire. For a moment, it seemed Earth might prevail. But then, a massive energy pulse erupted from the Zanari flagship, washing over the battlefield. The drone fighters went dark, drifting lifelessly. Nolan's tactical display showed Earth's forces in tatters, the Zanari regrouping for a final push. There was only one option left. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered, his voice heavy. "I'm taking her in." As the Titan's crew evacuated, Nolan plotted a collision course with the Zanari flagship. The ship groaned as he pushed its engines beyond their limits, streaking towards the alien vessel. At the last second, Nolan punched the eject button. His escape pod blasted clear just as the Titan slammed into the Zanari ship. Both vessels erupted in a massive fireball, the shockwave rippling through space. Nolan watched from his pod as the Zanari fleet, leaderless and in disarray, began to retreat. He let out a ragged breath, the adrenaline fading. A human rescue ship scooped up his pod hours later. As Nolan stepped aboard, he saw the aftermath of the battle spread out before him. The victory had come at a terrible cost. "We won the day," the rescue ship's captain said. But the war's just getting started," Nolan finished grimly. He stared out at the stars, knowing the Zanari would be back, and next time, they'd be out for blood. Nolan's escape pod drifted through the debris field, the remnants of the Titan and Zanari flagship scattered around him. His breath fogged the pod's viewport as he watched for signs of rescue. Hours passed before a human ship's searchlight pierced the darkness. As Nolan stepped aboard the rescue vessel, his legs buckled. A medic rushed to his side, but Nolan waved him off. "I'm fine. Get me to command." In the war room, holographic displays flickered with grim data. Admiral Hendrix's face was etched with exhaustion. "We won the battle, Nolan, but at a terrible cost." Nolan studied the casualty reports, his throat tight. "And the Zanari?" "Retreating, but our long-range sensors show they're regrouping. Intel suggests their leader, Sirius, survived." Nolan's fists clenched. "So we've only bought ourselves time." Days blurred as Earth's military scrambled to rebuild. In a secure bunker deep beneath the lunar surface, Nolan stood before a table of haggard officers. "We can't win a war of attrition," Nolan said. "We need to hit them where it hurts." He laid out a plan so audacious it bordered on insanity, a strike at the heart of Zanari space, targeting their shipyards and homeworld. Captain Janko, his loyal second-in-command, leaned forward. "Sir, with all due respect, that's suicide." "Maybe," Nolan admitted, "but it's our only shot." The plan was approved. Nolan handpicked his team, the best of the best. As they boarded the experimental Wraith-class infiltrator, Nolan addressed his crew. "What we're about to attempt has never been done. But if we succeed, we give humanity a fighting chance." The Wraith slipped into the uncharted wormhole, emerging in Zanari space. Through the view screen, Nolan saw the alien homeworld, a massive orb shrouded in strange, swirling clouds. Surrounding it were the shipyards, overflowing with half-built warships and defense platforms. "Engage cloaking," Nolan ordered. The Wraith shimmered and vanished. They glided past Zanari patrols, sensors straining for any sign they'd been detected. Nolan's palms were slick with sweat as they approached the shipyards. "Docking tube extended," the pilot reported. "We're in." Nolan split his team. He led one group to the shipyard's computer core, while Janko took another to plant charges on critical structures. In the cavernous computer hub, Nolan's tech specialist worked feverishly to upload the virus. Alien characters scrolled across holographic screens. "It's in," the specialist whispered, "corrupting their construction data now." Meanwhile, Janko's team moved through maintenance tunnels, planting antimatter charges at key junctions. Each device was no larger than a fist, but carried enough power to vaporize a city block. Nolan's comm crackled. "Sir, charges are set, but we've got company headed our way." He cursed under his breath. "Fall back to extraction point, now." As they raced through the shipyard's winding corridors, an urgent transmission came through from their long-range scouts. Sirius's invasion fleet was already en route to Earth. "Change of plans," Nolan barked. "We're leaving, now." They piled into the Wraith as the first explosions rocked the shipyard. Through the view screen, Nolan watched fireballs blossom across the massive structure. Alarms wailed as Zanari ships scrambled to respond. "Plot a course for the wormhole," Nolan ordered. "Maximum speed." The Wraith streaked away from the chaos, its cloaking field straining under the speed. They threaded through the attacking Zanari fleet, weapons fire filling space around them. Nolan held his breath as they neared the wormhole. A near miss from a Zanari cruiser rocked the ship. "Wormhole detected," the pilot called. "Entering in 3, 2, 1. Reality twisted as they plunged into the swirling vortex. Moments later, they emerged in Earth space. As the tension bled from the bridge, Nolan sagged in his chair. They'd succeeded, but he knew the real battle was yet to come. The Zanari would be here soon, and Earth would face its greatest test. Nolan's eyes hardened as he stared at the view screen, picturing the alien armada bearing down on his homeworld. Whatever happened next would decide the fate of humanity. Humanity. But as Nolan watched the Zanari fleet approach on the tactical display, he knew the real battle was about to begin. "Status report," Nolan barked, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the solar system. Lieutenant Commander Chen, his tactical officer, responded crisply. "Long-range sensors detect Zanari forces crossing the Kuiper Belt, sir. Estimated time to Mars orbit, 72 hours. Nolan's eyes hardened. "Not enough time. What's the status of our defensive preparations?" "Project Armageddon is still in final testing phases," Chen reported. "Dr. Reeves estimates another week before it's fully operational." "We don't have a week," Nolan muttered. He tapped a series of commands into his console, bringing up a detailed map of human military assets. "Deploy the 3rd and 5th fleets to Mars. Have them set up a perimeter defense grid. We need to slow the Zanari advance at all costs." As orders flew across subspace channels, Nolan turned his attention to Earth itself. The planet's surface bustled with frantic activity, visible even from orbit. Massive energy shields shimmered into existence, covering major population centers. New defense platforms rose from hidden underground silos, their weapons primed and ready. On the far side of the moon, a team of engineers worked tirelessly on the towering frame of Project Armageddon. The massive energy cannon dwarfed the surrounding lunar landscape, its barrel stretching for kilometers across the dusty surface. Captain Janko stood at the base of the cannon, surveying the controlled chaos around him. Technicians swarmed over exposed circuitry, making last-minute adjustments and calibrations. He keyed his comm unit. "Janko to Admiral Wright. We're pushing the reactor to 90% capacity. Any more, and we risk a meltdown." Nolan's voice crackled back. "Understood, Captain. Do what you can. We're out of time." The first shots of the battle erupted in the skies above Mars. Human ships darted between the red planet's moons, unleashing volleys of missiles at the approaching Zanari vanguard. Energy beams lanced across space, punching holes through alien shields. But for every Zanari ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The vast armada pressed forward relentlessly, shrugging off human attacks like annoying insect bites. Sirius, the Zanari leader, watched the battle unfold from the bridge of his flagship. His massive form towered over his subordinates, tentacles writhing with barely contained rage. "These humans dare to resist?" he hissed. "Show them the price of defiance. Target their planetary defenses." Antimatter warheads streaked towards Mars, their payload capable of cracking a planet's crust. Human defenders scrambled to intercept, but they were too few, too slow. The first impacts shook Mars to its core. Massive fissures split the red soil, magma boiling up from deep below. Human bases vanished in blinding flashes of light, their occupants vaporized in an instant. Back on Earth, Nolan watched in horror as Mars burned. He banged his hand against his chair. "We can't let them reach Earth. Chen, status of Project Armageddon?" "Online, sir," Chen reported, "but untested. We don't know if—" "No choice," Nolan cut him off. "Target the Zanari flagship and fire." On the moon's surface, Captain Janko received the order. He took a deep breath, then pressed his palm against the activation scanner. Armageddon hummed to life, its massive capacitors charging with unimaginable energy. A blinding beam of pure destruction lanced out from the moon, crossing the vast distance to Mars in seconds. It struck the Zanari flagship dead center, the energy discharge visible across the entire solar system. The alien vessel's shields flared brilliantly, then failed. In an instant, the massive ship simply ceased to exist, atomized by Armageddon's awesome power. The beam continued on, cutting through the Zanari fleet like a scythe through wheat. Sirius, miraculously transferred to a secondary command ship moments before impact, watched in disbelief as a third of his fleet vanished in a single strike. For the first time in the war, fear gripped his alien heart. On Earth, a ragged cheer went up as they witnessed Armageddon's devastating effect. But Nolan remained grim-faced. He knew this was only the beginning. The Zanari still outnumbered them, and Armageddon couldn't fire again for hours. As the remains of the Zanari fleet regrouped, Nolan steeled himself for the long fight ahead. Humanity had bloodied the invaders' nose, but the real battle was just beginning. Nolan stood on the bridge of his command destroyer, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the aftermath of the battle. The wreckage of Zanari ships drifted through space, a testament to the devastating power of Armageddon. "Status report," he barked, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across his console. "Zanari forces in full retreat, sir. We've destroyed approximately 60% of their fleet. The rest are scattering in all directions." Nolan nodded, his face grim. "And our losses?" Chen hesitated before answering. "We've lost 30% of our ships, Admiral. The lunar base has taken heavy damage. Captain Janko reports multiple breaches and significant casualties." The words hit Nolan like a physical blow. He closed his eyes for a moment, honoring the fallen. When he opened them again, his gaze was steel. "Get me a secure line to Captain Janko," he ordered. Moments later, Janko's face appeared on the main view screen. The captain looked haggard, a nasty cut above his left eye still oozing blood. "Admiral," Janko said, his voice hoarse, "we held the line but barely. If Ramirez's team hadn't arrived when they did—" "You did well, Captain," Nolan interrupted. "What's the status of Armageddon?" Janko glanced off screen, consulting with someone out of view. "The cannon's operational, sir, but we're running on backup power. Main reactors were damaged in the attack. We can maybe get off one more shot before we need extensive repairs." Nolan absorbed this information, his mind racing. One shot. It would have to be enough. "Understood. Begin repairs immediately. I want Armageddon back at full capacity as soon as possible." "Yes, sir," Janko replied. "What about the Zanari? They're in disarray now, but they won't stay that way for long," Nolan finished. "We need to strike now while they're vulnerable. Prepare for a final offensive." As Janko's image faded, Nolan turned to address his bridge crew. "This is our chance to end this war once and for all. We can't let the Zanari regroup. We push into their territory now, hit them where it hurts." He pulled up a star chart, highlighting a system deep in Zanari space. "This is their primary shipyard. We take it out, we cripple their ability to wage war." Lieutenant Ramirez, fresh from the lunar battle, stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, that's deep behind enemy lines. Even with their fleet scattered, it's a suicide mission." Nolan met Ramirez's gaze. "Maybe, but it's our only shot at ending this war for good. I won't order anyone to come with me. This is strictly volunteer." Ramirez straightened, a fierce glint in his eye. "Then count me in, sir. My team's ready for another fight." One by one, the bridge crew voiced their support. Nolan felt a surge of pride in his people, their unwavering courage in the face of overwhelming odds. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Let's make our preparations. We leave in 6 hours." As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Nolan turned back to the view screen. The debris field of the recent battle still hung in space, a grim reminder of the cost of this war. But beyond it, he could see Earth, a blue jewel against the vastness of space. Nolan's hands clenched at his sides. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would see this through. For Earth, for humanity. The final battle was about to begin. Admiral Nolan Wright stood before his assembled officers, his eyes burning with fierce intensity. "Operation Ragnarok," he announced, his voice carrying across the briefing room. "Our last best hope to end this war once and for all." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing detailed schematics of Zanari industrial complexes and military installations. Nolan's finger traced a path through the alien star systems. "We strike at the heart of their war machine," he continued. "Captain Janko, your team will deploy a specialized virus to cripple their automated factories. Lieutenant Diaz, your covert ops unit will track down Sirius. We take him out. We cut off the head of the snake." The officers leaned in, studying the mission parameters. Janko spoke up, his voice tight with tension. "Sir, the virus is untested in their systems. If it fails—" Nolan cut him off. "It won't fail. You designed it, Captain. I trust your work." Hours later, the strike force assembled in the hangar bay of the stealth carrier Nemesis. Nolan watched as his troops performed final equipment checks, their faces grim and focused. He caught Corporal Ramirez's eye and nodded. "Time to earn our pay, Corporal," Nolan said. Ramirez grinned, hefting his pulse rifle. "Wouldn't have it any other way, sir." The wormhole drive hummed to life, reality twisting around them. In a flash, they emerged in Zanari space, undetected by the battered alien fleets. Janko's team went to work immediately, fingers flying over hollow keyboards as they uploaded the virus into Zanari data networks. On the main view screen, Nolan watched as factory after factory went dark, production lines grinding to a halt. "Sir!" Lieutenant Diaz's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got a hit on Sirius, tracking his transmission to a fortified world on the edge of their territory." Nolan's eyes narrowed. "Plot a course. All hands, prepare for orbital assault." The Nemesis streaked through space, its stealth systems straining to mask their approach. As they neared the planet, Zanari defenses sprang to life. Energy beams lanced out, seeking targets. "Evasive maneuvers," Nolan barked. "Launch the drop pods." Armored capsules streaked from the Nemesis, carrying Nolan's elite Marines toward the planet's surface. Anti-air fire filled the sky, but the shielded pods punched through. Nolan's pod slammed into the ground with bone-jarring force. He kicked open the hatch, plasma rifle at the ready. All around him, Argos Company Marines emerged from their pods, immediately engaging Zanari defenders. "Push forward," Nolan shouted over the din of battle. "To the Citadel!" They fought their way through the streets, pulse rifles blazing. Zanari combat drones swarmed overhead, raining fire from above. Nolan dove for cover as a nearby building exploded, showering them with debris. "Ramirez," he called, "take out those flyers." The corporal nodded, shouldering a massive rocket launcher. With pinpoint accuracy, he brought down drone after drone, clearing a path to the Citadel. Inside the alien structure, they battled through winding corridors and vast chambers. Zanari guards fell before their assault, but the cost was high. Nolan watched good men die, their faces seared into his memory. At last, they reached the inner sanctum. Nolan hefted a breaching charge, planting it on the massive doors. "Fire in the hole!" he shouted. The explosion rocked the entire complex. As the smoke cleared, Nolan led the charge into Sirius's command center. What he saw made his blood run cold. Towering combat walkers loomed before them, their weapons trained on the human intruders. Atop the largest machine stood Sirius himself, his alien features twisted in a snarl of defiance. "So, Admiral Wright," Sirius's voice boomed, "you dare to challenge me here?" Nolan raised his rifle, his voice steady. "It ends now, Sirius, one way or another." The alien leader's laughter echoed through the chamber. "Then come, human. Let us settle this once and for all." With a roar, the combat walkers surged forward. Nolan and his remaining troops scattered, using every trick and tactic at their disposal to outmaneuver the massive war machines. Ramirez's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, we've located Sirius's command node, working on shutting it down now." Nolan ducked as a massive metal fist crashed into the wall beside him. "Make it quick, Corporal!" The battle raged on, a desperate struggle of human ingenuity against overwhelming Zanari firepower. Nolan's troops used their stealth tech to stay one step ahead, striking from the shadows and fading away before the walkers could lock on. Suddenly, the walkers froze in place, their systems going dark. Ramirez had done it. Sirius leapt from his disabled war machine, landing with inhuman grace. He towered over Nolan, tentacles writhing with fury. "You've come far, human," Sirius hissed, "but your journey ends here." Nolan tossed aside his empty rifle, drawing a vibro blade from his belt. "We'll see about that." Human and alien circled each other, centuries of racial hatred distilled into this final confrontation. Sirius struck first, his tentacles lashing out with incredible speed. Nolan barely managed to dodge, feeling the air whistle past his face. He countered with a flurry of strikes, his blade a blur of motion. Sirius blocked each attack, his alien physiology granting him incredible strength and reflexes. They traded blows back and forth, neither able to gain the upper hand. Nolan felt his muscles burning, his reactions slowing by fractions of a second. He knew he couldn't keep this up forever. Sirius sensed weakness and pressed his advantage, his attacks growing more vicious. One tentacle slipped past Nolan's guard, slamming into his ribs with bone-crushing force. Nolan staggered, gasping for breath. The Zanari leader loomed over him, ready to deliver the final blow. But in that moment, Nolan saw an opening. With the last of his strength, he lunged forward, driving his vibro blade deep into Sirius's chest. The alien's eyes widened in shock and pain. He stumbled backward, green ichor spilling from the wound. "Impossible," Sirius gasped, his voice filled with disbelief. Nolan stood tall, his blade dripping with alien blood. "Nothing's impossible," he said, "when the fate of humanity hangs in the balance." Balance. Nolan's words hung in the air as Sirius slumped to the ground, his alien form twitching in its death throes. The human admiral stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. He wiped his blade clean on his tattered uniform, surveying the destruction around him. The command bunker lay in ruins, sparks flying from shattered consoles and alien bodies strewn across the floor. Nolan tapped his comm unit, wincing at the pain that shot through his side. "This is Admiral Wright. Sirius is down. I repeat, Sirius is neutralized." Static crackled in response. Then Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through, tight with urgency. "Admiral, we've got multiple launches detected from hidden silos across the planet's surface. They're... Oh, God." Nolan's blood ran cold. "Report, Lieutenant." "Sir, they're Apocalypse-class warheads, aimed at our fleet and ground forces. Impact in 60 seconds. Nolan sprinted for the nearest viewport, ignoring the protest of his battered body. The sky above was clear for a moment, then a series of bright flashes erupted across the horizon. Streaks of fire tore through the atmosphere, each one a harbinger of destruction. "All ships, this is Admiral Wright," Nolan barked into his comm. "Initiate emergency recall protocols. Break orbit immediately." He watched helplessly as the first warhead detonated, engulfing one of his cruisers in a ball of searing plasma. The ship's shields flared briefly before failing, its hull melting away in seconds. More explosions followed, each one consuming another chunk of the human invasion force. Nolan's fists clenched as he saw transport ships disintegrate, knowing hundreds of his troops were being vaporized with each blast. "Nemesis, what's your status?" Nolan demanded, searching the chaotic skies for his flagship. Captain Reeves's voice came through, strained but steady. "Shields at 30%, sir. We're initiating atmospheric brake now. It's going to be close." Nolan watched as the massive ship plunged into the upper atmosphere, trailing fire as it fought against the planet's gravity. Other vessels followed suit, their hulls glowing red-hot from the friction. "Come on," Nolan muttered, willing his people to survive. One by one, battered human ships punched through the firestorm, leaving trails of debris in their wake. Some didn't make it, torn apart by the combined forces of explosive shockwaves and atmospheric stress. After what felt like an eternity, a handful of ships emerged into the void of space. Nolan counted them, his heart sinking with each tally. Barely a fraction of his once mighty armada remained. His comm crackled again. "Admiral, we've got a signal from the surface. It's Lieutenant Ramirez." Nolan activated the channel, dreading what he might hear. Ramirez's voice came through, broken and fading. "Sir, Janko's virus, it worked. Their whole system is crashing, but we're not going to make it out. It's been an honor, Admiral." The transmission cut off abruptly. Nolan closed his eyes, honoring the sacrifice of his men. When he opened them again, he saw the remnants of his fleet gathered before him. Scorched hulls, flickering shields, and the grim faces of surviving crew members visible through shattered viewports. Nolan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. "Plot a course for Earth," he ordered. "We're going home." As the battered ships limped away from the Zanari homeworld, Nolan cast one last look at the planet below. Entire continents were dark now, the alien civilization eating itself alive from within. They had won. But as the slipstream drive engaged and the stars blurred around them, Nolan wondered at what cost their victory had come.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.